Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Just making sure everything is up and running here. Hope you all are doing great. I missed out last week with everything that had happened. I ended up having to figure out where in the world was going on with everything and ended up having a little bit of a problem getting some of this stuff up and running. And so I'm double checking everything, making sure everything is working correctly, that the live is where it needs to be, that it's turned on to the right people. That's one of the things I found out last week was that it was not allowing me to change anymore the people that could see it, that could actually see the video, which was really weird. And so I'm in the process of trying to make sure that everybody can see the video, that it's all looking right and the rest. And so you can tell me if you can see this. That would be fantastic. In fact, even right now, it's only allowing me to share it with people I'm friends with, which is really weird. But it's not allowing me to actually deal with sharing it where I need to go. Uh, so bear with me a second here as I try to figure out how I can make sure that this goes out to everyone as opposed to just some people. Let me see here. Okay. Always fun. But at the same time, if you want, you can go ahead and tell me in the chat where you're tuning in from, where you're at right now. I'm coming to you from sunny and hot Columbus, Ohio, which is very different. This is not the norm for us. Normally it's 65, 70, but today was one of those days where they actually put out kind of a thing like, be careful when you go outside because it's really hot out there. And which was kind of shocking because you don't really expect that. But that's kind of where we're at right now. It's that time of the year where everything starts changing a bit and the weather gets a little bit more nasty out. And so I am, man, it will not let me change this away from just friends to where everyone can see it. That is really weird. Well, this will have to do for this evening at least, and then I'll have to figure out how to change the settings on it at a later time. But I'm grateful that you're here. I hope you're doing fantastic tonight. Let me know, like I said, where you're coming from in the chat to try to keep up with that as I is. More than anything, I go back and look at it after the fact, where I'm able to see where everybody's coming from. Typically, every week we'll have people from all over the place, from Nigeria, from China, some of you from all over the United States, and the rest from Europe. And it's always fantastic to catch up with every one of you guys. It's one of the benefits of having traveled a lot in my life is that I end up having friends from all over the world, and I'm grateful just to catch up, spend time with you. If I've never met you before, send me a message. Love to get to know you in some way. I do my best to try to respond to messages as much as I can, and especially, and this is one of those weird things, especially if we have friends well, friends that are in connection at least in some way. I get a lot of messages from people that have no connections to anything, and as you know, in social media, there's always lovely little scams and other things that are going on at all times. With that in mind, though, tonight we've got a special little thing. I have recorded the video from last week, the one that I started, the power went out, caused all problems, and I will upload that one. Facebook has now changed, and this is partly what I think part of the problem is Facebook has now changed its live settings, and in fact, the videos that go live only stay up for a month, and then they go taken down. So you have to record them now ahead of time, and so that's kind of what I'm doing. Even recording live, I can go back and download them. But I'm trying to make sure that I then post them back in the group so everybody can see them. And for those of you that are in the rabbit hole, for those of you that are just on my Facebook page or on X or on Instagram and the rest, all of those different things, I'm doing my best to keep up with the new changes that have happened recently across all these different platforms. So, with that in mind, this is a kind of I wouldn't say it's a short one, but it's a shorter one in and of itself. And it's fascinating because it's very literary what we're about to read tonight. So let's dive into this lovely little chapter from God in the Dock called Religion and Science. So a bit of background here in the context. This is C.S. Lewis's essay, Religion and Science, was first published in 1945 in the magazine The Coventry Evening Telegraph. So you need to think this is at the height of World War II, right at the end of World War II. And this is back when publishing in a newspaper was, in a lot of ways, in this broader context, a lot of what we do, you and I, each every day when we post to social media and the rest. Citizen journalist is a unique thing, really, of the 20th century. Journalism as a profession has changed quite a bit. It used to be 20, 30 years ago, the idea of a blogger or the idea of somebody who was keeping up with, having a video camera with them. It was expensive. Now we all have it just with our phones everywhere we go. We all have the ability to create the news, to capture moments, to go viral. all of those different things. In the 1940s and the rest, typically there was still a concept of kind of an eliteness when it came to magazines and newspaper and journalism, and the writings in and of themselves typically had a higher standard. Now the idea of who's a journalist and who's not, who would write for something, and when somebody tells me, well, I have a blog, I still kind of roll my eyes in some ways, because in some ways having something or being able to publish something, when somebody tells me I write for a magazine and the rest, I always kind of, I need to know, well, what's the context, what's the content, what's the place, because there's a lot of people who have things, including myself, that write a lot online and in different ways, but it doesn't necessarily mean that what we write is true or correct. um, we've lost that a little bit. There used to be a way of if you couldn't get something published if you constantly made up things and you lied about things all the time. Nowadays, you have a whole entire industry in some ways on social medias where people who even lie or make up things along the way. I saw an article earlier today that was an AI generated photo of, I think it was Peyton Manning with an adopted daughter and all the rest. And I saw it shared a few times, and I understand it was a brilliant sentiment and everything that it was sharing. That this idea that he walked in and he adopted this girl and raised her, she's doing great, and you see her now. And but a quick search and you'll find out it's just not true. It's not reality. But it had photos and the rest, but they're all AI generated. And so, in this day and age, though, when this was being published in the newspaper, I would say there was still a publication standard. I wish I could say that also the news and print news and modern news had not also brought about their own demise as they became more politicized. It stopped being about reporting the news and it started being about creating the news. And this also came about in I'd say the late 80s and early 90s too, when 24-hour cable news networks became. When you have to provide news 24 hours a day, you got to start creating news instead of just waiting for it when it was happening. So that's kind of a little rabbit hole that I went down there. But I think it's important for us to note that not everyone was able to just write for a newspaper. And so when Lewis writes this, it would have been something that would have stood out. And so this essay reflects Lewis's broader intellectual project of defending Christian faith against modern skepticism. And don't forget, he was a professor, but he was a professor of medieval literature. But he was as he would kind of call a fledgling theologist, a fledgling apologist in the theological world. But he was unafraid to make his philosophical arguments, even in written word. And so this is particularly in the context of mid 20th century debates about the apparent conflict between religious beliefs and scientific progress. So the overall argument and premise, I just wanted to put this down as three kind of points in and of itself. So in Religion and Science, Lewis responds to the claim that scientific discoveries, such as the laws of nature, disprove miracles or divine action. So he argues three things, really. That scientific laws describe regular patterns, not absolute rules that preclude exceptions, like miracles. And the existence of natural laws presupposes a rational order, which could point to a purposeful, intelligent design. And that science and religion ask different questions, and conflating them leads to unnecessary conflict. So that would be the key component here as we start off. So just those three kind of things. And from here, this writing style of what we're going to see in this Religion and Science, this God in the Dock kind of chapter, mini chapter, because it's not that long, is a conversation. And so, as I would normally do, I would stop at different moments and add different things to the rest. But honestly, it doesn't really fit for that. Instead, those little three things that I just noted, and then I'm just going to read through this little article, make a few comments at the end. But like I said, it's a simple one. And I think sometimes his most beautiful prose is the simplicity of what he sets forth, the arguments and the style. It's parabolic, as in it is a parable. It's parable-like in the fact that he creates a scenario, talking conversation between two individuals, whether it's himself and someone else, or just two individuals. And it allows the reader to hear and see a conversation almost like they're a fly on the wall, listening to this. And based off the arguments that are made, they're able to come to a conclusion. They're able to glean something from it. And I think it's a beautiful way of doing this. In the same way of the screw tape letters, where you had this this opposite side, where all of a sudden you had this dark side where you were hearing from the enemy and how the enemy might attack you. Here you're seeing, though, this conversation. It's kind of a third person sitting hiding behind a drape, looking on, listening to this conversation amongst these individuals. And it's a fascinating prose, fascinating way of writing. It's one that I've been kind of exploring recently because I kind of like it. I like this back and forth narrative style that he puts forth. So let's read it together. Miracles, said my friend. Oh, come, science has knocked the bottom out of all of that. We know that nature is governed by fixed laws. Didn't people always know that? Said I. Good Lord, no, said he. For instance, take a story like the virgin birth. We know that such a thing couldn't happen. We know there must be a male spermatozoon. But look here, said I. Saint Joseph. Who's he? Asked my friend. He was the husband of the Virgin Mary. If you'll read the story of the Bible, you'll find that when he saw his fiancée was going to have a baby, he decided to cry off the marriage. Why did he do that? Wouldn't most men? Any man would, said I, provided he knew the laws of nature. In other words, provided he knew that a girl doesn't ordinarily have a baby unless she's been sleeping with a man. But according to your theory, people in the old days didn't know that nature was governed by fixed laws. I'm pointing out that the story shows that St. Joseph knew that law just as well as you do. But he came to believe in the virgin birth afterwards, didn't he? Quite. But he didn't do so because he was under any illusion as to where babies come from in the ordinary course of nature. He believed in the virgin birth as something supernatural. He knew nature works in fixed, regular ways. But he also believed that there existed something beyond nature which could interfere with her workings, from outside, so to speak. But modern science has shown there's no such thing. Really, said I. Which of the sciences? Oh, well, that's a matter of detail, said my friend. I can't give you chapter and verse from memory. But don't you see, said I, that science never could show anything of the sort? Why on earth not? Because science studies nature, and the question is whether anything besides nature exists, anything outside. How could you find that out by studying simply nature? But don't we find out that nature must work in an absolutely fixed way? I mean, the laws of nature tell us not merely how things do happen, but how they must happen. No power could possibly alter them. How do you mean? Said I. Look here, said he. Could this something outside that you talk about make 2 and 2 5? Well, no, said I. All right, said he. Well, I think the laws of nature are really like 2 and 2 making 4. The idea of their being altered is as absurd as the idea of altering the laws of arithmetic. Half a moment, said I. Suppose you put sixpence into a drawer today, and sixpence into the same drawer tomorrow. Do the laws of arithmetic make it certain you'll find a shilling's worth there the day after? Of course, said he, provided no one's been tampering with your drawer. There's an interesting point there. Ah, but that's the whole point, said I. The laws of arithmetic can tell you what you'll find with absolute certainty, provided that there's no interference. If a thief has been at the drawer, of course, you'll get a different result. But the thief won't have broken the laws of arithmetic, only the laws of England. Now, aren't the laws of nature much in the same boat? Don't they all tell you what will happen provided there's no interference? How do you mean? Well, the laws will tell you how a billiard ball will travel on a smooth surface if you hit it in a particular way. Not only provided no one interferes, but only provided no one interferes. If after it's already in motion, someone snatches up a cue and gives it a biff on one side, why then you won't get what the scientists predicted. No, of course not. You can't allow for monkey tricks like that. Quite. And in the same way, if there was anything outside nature, and if it interfered, then the events which the scientists expected wouldn't follow. That would be what we call a miracle. In one sense, it wouldn't break the laws of nature. The laws tell you what will happen if nothing interferes. They can't tell you whether something is going to interfere. I mean, it's not the expert at arithmetic who can tell you how likely something is to interfere with the pennies in my drawer. A detective would be more of use. It isn't the physicist who can tell you how likely I am to catch up a cue and spoil his experiment with the billiard ball. You'd better ask the psychologist. And it isn't the scientist who can tell you how likely nature is to be interfered from outside. You must go to the metaphysician. These are rather niggling points, said my friend. You see, the real objection goes far deeper. The whole picture of the universe which science has given us makes it such rot to believe that the power of the back of it all could be interested in us tiny little creatures crawling about on an unimportant planet. It was also obviously invented by people who believed in a flat earth with the stars only a mile or two away. When did people believe that? Why, all those old Christian chaps you're always telling about. I mean, Boethius and Augustine and Thomas Aquinas and Dante. Sorry, said I, but this is one of the few subjects I do know something about. I reached out my hand to a bookshelf. You see this book? I said, Ptolemy's Almagest. You know what it is? Yes, said he. It's the standard astronomical handbook used all through the Middle Ages. Well, just read that, I said, pointing to Book 1, Chapter 5. The Earth, read out my friend, hesitating a bit as he translated the Latin. The Earth, in relation to the distance of the fixed stars, has no appropriate size and must be treated as a mathematical point. There was a moment's silence. Did they really know that then? Said my friend. But none of the histories of science, none of the modern encyclopedias ever mention the fact. Exactly, said I. I'll leave you to think out the reason. It almost looks as if someone was anxious to hush it up, doesn't it? I wonder why. There was another short silence. At any rate, said I, we can now state the problem accurately. People usually think the problem is how to reconcile what we now know about the size of the universe with our traditional ideas of religion. That turns out not to be the problem at all. The real problem is this. The enormous size of the universe and the insignificance of the earth were known for centuries, and no one ever dreamed that they had any bearings on the religious question. Then, less than 100 years ago, they all suddenly trotted out as an argument against Christianity, and the people who trot them out are carefully hush up the fact that they were all known long ago. Don't you think that all you atheists are strangely unsuspicious people? And this is where he kind of ends it. This is where he kind of takes it away and just kind of changes it and lays it out his entire argument. Now, it's a brilliant, playful conversation between a friend and it would seem an atheist. Him and Lewis and an atheist of some sort. And they're going back and forth, and he's noting some of the problems that they were at that day. One of the problems that they had in that day would seem that there was this idea that Christians were somehow unlearned, that they did not have a deep understanding, and that the ancient peoples definitely didn't have any learning at all. And that's part of the problem, and this is not a unique one to their time. We do this today. In fact, over and over again, it's this modern marvel of thinking that everybody else that came before us was just morons. They were all idiots. They didn't know what they were talking about in the rest. That everything new and everything shiny, because we've created new things. We have cell phones. We have live streaming. We have cameras. We have these ability to do all these things, means somehow that we are smarter than generations past. Now, there's an aspect where we might know history better, and there's things that we've learned upon. But the idea that we are somehow smarter and know all things, or that you can then dismiss religion, which is what this man is doing, dismiss religion because of those arguments, or making assumptions that, well, we know better now. We don't need any of this nonsense and the rest that's always been there. That's where his argument falls flat. Now, it's a fascinating little tiny story. It's a neat one just to get into. And so that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. I love this little tiny one. I hope it's something that's encouraging you. In fact, it may just be something to practice, to read through as you read through it, how you might be able to learn to have conversations with people about things like the beginning and about the Bible and about faith and about community and what it means to be a Christian. And in doing so, you might just be able to change someone's perception. So that's my hope for you. Until next week, I hope you guys have a fantastic week. I love you all. I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Look forward to being back with you next week as we continue on into our next chapter. It's about to get really interesting going forward the next couple of weeks. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you then.